Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Adjusters247.com News and Views for Claims Professionals webinar. In this weekly webinar, we're going to cover a lot of material, including what we went over in this week's past podcasts, and we're going to have a discussion of any questions or suggestions that you might have. We'll also be training about the vacancy and unoccupied claims in our training segment for today. First, I want to thank you all for spending a little bit of time with us today. I know that everybody has a lot they could be doing, but I appreciate you spending a little bit of time. We're going to go over an overview of Adjusters 24/7 here as we get going. We'll explain about the podcast and how you can listen and download the podcast and all the different avenues that we have available for that. We'll also discuss the blog post information that we send out and all of our social media involvement. And of course, we'll go over all the ways that you can get in touch with us, including email, to get information and to make suggestions and comments. Again, the training segment is going to be on vacant and unoccupied claims, and especially vandalism and malicious mischief. And I have a sample claim and photos that I'm going to use during that discussion. Questions and answers are going to come at the end of everything. You may have noticed everybody starts off in the muted fashion until the end of the training, and then we'll go and review any questions that you may have. But if you have a question at all before we get to the end of everything, you can use the question box there in the GoToMeeting screen, and I'll be checking those as we go along and answering questions as we go along. But if you have anything that is pressing, feel free to use that questions box to send me a note while we're doing the webinar, and I'll be more than happy to include it in what we're going over. First of all, a little bit of Adjusters247.com, what we do and why we do it. Basically, we're dedicated to providing claim professionals the information they need to be more efficient and proficient, and we do that in a lot of different ways. We do that with webinars like today's, and those are important in getting some information out on claims that we happen to be seeing and different topics that are suggested to us that some of our listeners want to hear about in the training webinars. But what we try to do is make sure that if an adjuster or claims professional at any level has a question about something, that they have an avenue to go and get some answers on that. If you're handling any particular type of claims and you're having some issues with coverage or how to adequately investigate that claim, we're here for that, and there's no fee involved in getting the information that you need. And regardless of the position or level of experience, the material that we discuss in each podcast helps us all to be better in our everyday lives, whether it's professionally or personally. And I'm not sure if everybody on the webinar has seen our website yet, has gone to the website yet, but quickly, our website has a lot of information on it. There's a lot of tools that are available on here now, and we're improving it every single day and adding more material to it. But if you haven't been to our website yet, just go to www.adjusters247.com, and this is our homepage, which gives you some information about what we do and what we have available. There's also a lot of information that you can get from this site, including the different ways to connect with us on social media, and also ways to listen to or download the podcast that we do every single day of the week, so that you can have that information. And I'll go over that a little bit more as we move along. But We also have a schedule of events for the upcoming week that you will have available just on our home screen. And then there's also an opportunity for you to send us a message through the home screen. If you have a suggestion, if you have an urgent matter, these are monitored throughout the day. So anything that comes in, we reply to immediately, and that way you can have the information that you need, or at least get pointed in the right direction. Also on our website, we have, again, a page just about what we do and everything that you would need to answer any questions that you have about us. On the Contact Us page, all of the phone numbers to get in touch with us are here on the Contact Us page, and as well as on the blog page that we'll talk about here in just a little bit. But media resources, every time we do something, whether it's a blog post or a webinar, in fact, I already have the space available for today's webinar, will be listed here on our media resources page, and you can access those at any time. Also, all of the podcasts that we have done to date are listed here. This is iTunes that we are listed on, and you can just use iTunes or any one of the other social media sites that we distribute our podcast on, and you can go and access the information from there. There's also an important links page where sponsors and different vendors that we're familiar with, we will put their logos and a direct link to their website. So all you have to do is click on the button, and it'll take you directly to their website where you can get the information that you need as well. And then this is our blog page, and I'm going to go into detail on this in just a little bit, but when you go to our blog page, and it has every day we send another post out, and you can access all of those from here. They're all listed here in order. Just click on one of these buttons, and when we put our blog post together, those all get sent out through social media and everything else, and we'll review that a little bit more fully here in just a few minutes. But I would suggest you go to our website, you sign up for our newsletter that's on there, and any time you have a question or a suggestion, anything that you think would benefit other claims professionals, feel free to drop us a message through the website, and that way we can go and address all those and include that information in a future podcast. As I said in the previous screen, we try to put a little bit of something for everybody in every podcast, and we format our podcast in this way so that we can go and address all the issues that we're hearing about and then the suggestions that we get in one of these different segments. We start off with an introduction and who is going to join us on that show as far as the guest list is concerned. Then we jump right into a severe weather update where we have storm reports from around the country. We have different contacts everywhere that bad things are happening and catastrophes are happening, and we use this segment to go in and make sure that everybody knows of the severe weather that's occurred across the country, wherever it is. We have listeners in every state in the United States, and even in Canada and Germany for some reason. But we make sure that people have the information that they need, and they're able to go and access that through the podcast. We also have a storm tips and catastrophe operations segment where we discuss any kind of pre or post storm tips that we have. Once a storm occurs, we want to make sure that the adjusters that are getting deployed are able to find lodging and know what areas are accessible, which ones aren't, and we use the podcast as the vehicle to get that information out. Every podcast, of course, is published, and so you can go back to a podcast at your leisure to listen to it and see the information that's there. But we will have links on our website based on those conversations that we have with people that are out in the field and already deployed, and also, pre-storm tips, making sure that adjusters who have never been deployed on a CAT before or have daily claim experience but no CAT experience, or even if somebody's worked a CAT but it wasn't a major CAT in the past, we offer all kinds of advice and tips leading up to a storm that looks like it's impending, and that way people can get prepared for whatever they're going to see when they get there. Claim industry news, we go and use this segment for anything that is current and relevant to the claims profession. The subject matter varies from day to day, and it depends on whatever the hot button issues are of the day. We also go and use this segment to discuss any job opportunities that we're currently hearing about and that are available out there for either catastrophe or daily claims operations, work comp, inside, outside work. We have different people that join us that are in the personnel business to go and get adjusters or claims professionals staffing in different carriers and different situations, and this is where we include that information in that segment. Then we go on to an Adjusting 101 segment where we have guidance for the newer adjusters, or as a refresher for adjusters that haven't been in the field for a while. It's common for adjusters to have in between storm time or have a lull in between the assignments that they get, and what we try to do is make sure that people stay fresh with the information, they get current with whatever the newest trends and topics are, and that includes making sure that the newer adjusters get a basis for what they're going to be running into once they do get out into the field. And then we transition that into the seasoned adjuster time, where we discuss policies, procedures, and technology issues that people who have been in the business for a while, I always say, I've been in the business for 32 years, and I learn something new every single day about this business, and there's a lot that changes on a daily basis. It could be policies, it could be computer programs, it could be anything that has to do with claim handling procedures, and we make sure that we use this segment for the more experienced adjusters to stay up on the current trends. That way they don't get left behind in the whole mix of things. And then we always have a time management and organizational tips and tricks segment where we discuss time management and different ways to organize yourself as a claims professional to be more efficient. Excuse me. And then we also use that segment for different areas to help with stress management and try to get people to get a more healthy and more stress-free work environment to not get burned out on the business, which is very easy to do if you don't have the tools in your toolbox to go and be prepared for it. And then we have what we call our reality check segment, where we share different successes and setbacks that we've had or we know of, to try to help people learn from other people's experiences without having to go through it themselves. If you're going to a CAT for the first time and you're not prepared for what you're going to be running into, you may not understand, the sleeping in your truck for 2 weeks and bathing in a gas station bathroom because there's no lodging around for hours and hours from where you're deployed to. We share those stories, and we go and we get people prepared for what you're going to run into when you are out there in the field, and it's a way for us to go and share our experiences, and we have different guests that join us for that as well, and share their experiences that they've run into in a variety of different settings, and that's what we use that segment for. And then when we end the show, we always make sure that we discuss any questions that we've received and make sure that those are answered before we end the show, and then we make sure that everybody understands any upcoming events that we have or certification classes that we're going to have, and we always make sure that people have the way to get in touch with us before they get done listening to the podcast. Now, you can always go to our website, and all of these links are there. Immediately after we produce the podcast, we go and we publish it through our hosting site, and within a couple of minutes, it's available for you to download through iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. We're also on SoundCloud, TuneIn, and a variety of different areas where you can go and access it. Once you do access it, you can set up an RSS feed to where you get copies of it automatically if that's what you choose. If you don't want to download it, then you can always just go and listen to it and leave it not to download, and that's fine too. But you'll always have an opportunity to go and access that information. Now, when you do that and we get everything all published, then we go and we send out a blog notice to everybody, letting them know that it has been published and that it is available for them. This is the blog post that you would receive. This was yesterday's, letting everybody know that episode number 25 was published. And then we always put in the show notes here where what we discussed in each one of those segments, so that you can go back and look at the topics that we covered and make sure that if there is something that you're interested in, something that you need to go and reference later on down the line, you can always go and search by a keyword and bring up the podcast where we discuss that. We also have in the blog itself, the blog post itself, the different areas to go and just click on the button here and it'll take you to Stitcher or iTunes or Google Play to access the podcast. And then we have the prior day's podcasts that are listed there, the schedule of events again, little information about us is also on there, and then we have another contact form where you can send us your questions, and we always include all of our contact information at the bottom of the blog post so that you'll have all of that information available to you whenever you do even just look at the blog posts themselves. Again, you can set up the RSS feed into your Outlook or whatever email system you use. You can just right-click on the blog RSS, copy the link address, add that in there, and then every day you'll automatically get the blog post into your email, and then you can access that and download the podcast or send us any kind of information through the Contact Us page here at the bottom of the blog post. And once we get done with the blog post, then we have a bunch of social media that we send things off to, and that includes all of the major ones: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and every other one that's out there. We are part of, and we send out all of the information on the social media websites, and that way you're able to access the information in a variety of different ways. So right now you should know about what Adjusters247.com actually does and how we do it. You also should have a pretty good idea of how to listen to us and get all that information either through the through the different avenues that we have available to us, and then you can always access us through the website and or the blog and get all the information that you need from there. Now we're going to talk about vacant and unoccupied claims. It's a issue that we've run into here lately, and it's created a bunch of issues. So we want to make sure that we are covering all of that to make sure that everybody understands the difference and make sure that everybody has the information that they need on making these determinations when you're dealing with a claim that either has been vacant or is unoccupied when the loss occurs. Frequently, property adjusters have to determine whether a claim is covered by the insurance policy when there's a question as to whether anyone was actually living in the premises at the time. When the home is unoccupied or when there's a limited use of a commercial building, the question often becomes much more difficult for the handling adjuster. And one of the things that we always look at is how can we go to make sure that we are handling things the right way. And one of the things that we are always concerned about is making sure that the adjusters have the information that they need to go and handle things the right way. And one of the things that we always end up having issues about is getting the documentation together and making sure that the adjusters are handling things the way that they need to be, and making sure that all of the adjusters that are faced with this dilemma are able to go and get the claim handled the most expeditious way, so that we can go and make sure that the claims get closed and without any kickbacks for not paying attention to the vacancy, and making sure that everybody is on the same page when it comes to that. And it's very important that in a homeowner's policy especially, we make a determination that if the coverage at issue is due to vacancy, is contained, it's always listed in the policy part of the HO3, say, under the exclusions portion of the policy. The commercial policy is always going to be limited in the coverage and the perils themselves if the property is vacant under certain conditions, and we're going to talk about those in just a little bit. The ISO, the Insurance Service Office, they have language in the homeowner's policy that always will exclude coverage for vandalism, sprinkler leakage unless the system has been protected against freezing, glass breakage, water damage, and theft or attempted theft, while other losses will be reduced by 15% or better if the house has been vacant for more than 30 days. It can be 60 days, but in most cases it's going to be 30 days. Now on a commercial policy, they go and they extend coverage, and through their exclusions, they'll go and remove that coverage by going and having what's called a 31% rule, which means that if the building is less than 31% of its total square footage, either leased or already being used for the insured's personal use, then there's not going to be coverage, and that building is going to be not covered, and that exclusion is going to apply. Now, the intent of the vacancy provision is to make sure that especially a vacant building or a home is always going to be at a greater risk for loss, because there's not going to be anybody there to go and keep tabs on what's happening there, and people who are in the business of breaking into those type of places, they know when a building is vacant or when it's occupied, and the vacant ones get broken into at a very disproportional rate to ones that are not vacant. So it's very important that when you are investigating these and you have something that is happening there, you have to know the definitions of vacancy and unoccupied, and they are different. Vacant means entirely empty, so that nothing is in the house, nothing is in the building. Unoccupied means the lack of a habitual presence of human beings. That means if it doesn't have the amenities that would typically be there for you to run your household, or for that business to operate, it's going to be considered vacant or unoccupied. And it's important that when you are investigating these, you take a recorded statement of the insured and other residents to find out exactly when the property itself became vacant or unoccupied. You also want to go and make sure that you obtain utility statements for electric, water, gas, and phones. And you're going to want to make sure that you get those back to 6 months or more prior to the loss, to try to identify exactly when that property did become vacant, and that'll help tremendously with being able to determine whether it is a covered loss or not. Check with the post office for forwarding orders. A lot of times, if you're dealing with a commercial building, it could be the tenants. And the important thing about that is, if you get a commercial building, say, and one of the tenants moved out, 30 or 60 days ago, their square footage will not be included in that 31% calculation. So you need to make sure that you get all of that information together, and you'll talk with the tenants and get their leases and everything else when you go and you do that. If there was a fire that was involved, talk to the investigators and the firemen to see what contents were in the risk and what was said at the scene. There's a lot of information that you can get from the first responders, and over the years I've gotten a lot of information that has been part of the fire investigations that I've handled. And you look for different things like photographs, personal effects that are missing at the dwelling, and the firefighters will be able to let you know what they saw while they were there, what contents items were in there, and help clear up some of the things that may be confusing when you're trying to determine the occupancy or vacancy of a building. You also want to obtain any photos from the first responders or investigators that were taken to determine if the normal objects for the residency were in the home at the time of the loss. That's very important that whatever documentation you can get, and photos are one of the best right after the loss, you want to make sure you get copies of all those, and you're able to produce those and report on those when you put your reports together for the carriers. Another thing that we typically do is interview neighbors and find out what they saw and what they were told. Most neighbors, they can tell when a house has been vacant and how long it has been vacant. Even if they didn't see the moving truck pull up, they know that the people that were living there haven't been there in X amount of time. So you want to always find out from the neighbors what they have seen, and whatever they were told by whoever the residents of that household were, so that you can go and put that in your report as well. You also want to contact cellular providers for address and billing purposes. Most people have cell phones, and they change their billing addresses, and you can find out, it's not restricted information, what their billing address is, so that you can go and find out exactly when they did move from that residence to another location. We're dealing with claims that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars, and riding on whether it was vacant at the time of the loss or not. So it's important that we get all the information that we possibly can. Another big thing is you want to make sure, you want to check and see if the house has been listed for sale. If so, you want to interview the agent. The agent will know how long it's been up for sale, whether there were any tenants in it, when the last tenants got out of there, and they'll be able to give you the information on whether there was any kind of issues with prior tenants, or what they had to do to be able to get the prior tenants out, to be able to affect the repairs, to list the house for sale. The agents can be a valuable resource as well, so you're going to want to make sure you get that information. As I said about the commercial property, you're going to want to get copies of the lease, interview the tenants, and see if they still have their unit maintained and furnished. As I said earlier, that will determine whether that square footage of their unit is going to be included in that 31% calculation. Ask them, how many employees they have. Get names and contact those employees. They'll be able to tell you if they're still getting a paycheck, still going to work, or if they're, they may have gotten laid off a couple of months ago and when the business closed down. So we want to get all the information that we can on top of all the information from the insured. We definitely need to make sure that we get all of those employees, and if you're dealing with a commercial loss, you want to make sure that you're getting all the information you can from the insured and their tenants while you're handling these type of claims, to make sure if there's a vacancy issue, if there's a some sort of a unoccupied status of that structure, that you're able to address that in your reports. Now, one of the things that's interesting, and I just threw this here at the end before I show you some pictures, is the question of, does vandalism include arson? And a lot of it depends on the jurisdiction. Right now, it's probably 50-50, depending on the state and even sometimes in the county, where they do look at the definition of vandalism and the definition of arson, and they look and they see, yes, that arson does meet that definition of vandalism, which is intentionally going and damaging somebody else's property. And if someone sets somebody's house on fire, it seems to me that that would meet that requirement. That would mean that if a vacant house catches on fire, there may be an exclusion that applies if it has been vacant for more than 30 or 60 days, depending on the policy. And again, most of them are 30 days, but you always want to look at the policy to make sure. So you want to go and always address that if you are handling a fire loss where there's an arson that is possible, or and you want to make sure that you address how long the house had been vacant or unoccupied. In the states where they don't look at arson as being vandalism, then fire is covered and the insureds will get paid for that structure. But in the states that do look at that definition, and the municipalities that do look at that definition as being that arson does meet the requirements of vandalism, then it will go and have those exclusions that will apply. But it is something that you definitely want to go and keep in mind as you are handling those claims. Now, I wanted to show you some pictures. This is a vandalism claim that we had, but it also I chose this file and these pictures because there's a lot of different things going on at this risk. This was a tenant dwelling, and the tenants moved out, basically a midnight move. I guess they were about to get evicted. They decided to bolt, and they left a lot of their personal effects behind. Well, that house sat vacant for a while, and vandals got in. They started stealing the wiring out of the box, the breaker box, the breaker panel. They stole a lot of copper out of the house itself. The kitchen cabinets were not damaged. A lot of this, and the reason I'm showing you this is because there's a big difference between vandalism and just tenant abuse or hard living by the tenants, which wouldn't be covered. Vandalism, absolutely, but the key is there has to be, and this is where the MM comes in VMM, there has to be malicious intent. Vandalism, malicious mischief means, somebody had to come in there, like you'll see some pictures here in a minute, and intentionally set out to destroy or cause damage to that structure. Just going and being a slob is not covered under the policy. That's why most landlords get security deposits to offset the cost of cleaning things up at the end of things. But you'll see in some of these pictures here, some of this is just tenant hard living. Some of it, like trying to get to the wires here, we could classify this as a vandalism item, but everything else, the dirt and being a slob and them leaving a lot of stuff all around, would just not be included as part of that claim. Some of these things, the grease on the stove, if the vandals had come in and took a sledgehammer to the stove would be covered, not just hard living by the part of the tenants. Any type of other damage that was here, and you see a lot of these rooms have contents still in them, and from where the tenants took off, and they did not go and take all their stuff with them. They just basically took what they could fit in their car or what they had on their back. Cleaning up all this stuff is not vandalism, and it's not something that we would include in our estimate, because that's, again, what the security deposit would be for, and it's not the intent of the insurance policy to go and cover hard living, by the tenant or the occupants. Again, they stole the wiring, and the vandals, when they got in there, you see where a lot of the wires were cut and stripped out. That would be considered part of the vandalism and malicious mischief. In some of these rooms, you can see where the vandals got in there. They've been staying in there, and you can see where, while they were in there, they caused damage, especially to these hardwood floors. These hardwood floors, they had a lot of cinder blocks scattered around the house. You'll see here in another picture where the cinder blocks were actually used on a chair to go and get access to the attic. But where you have a cinder blocks like this, and they rolled them across the floor, scratched up the floor, that would be considered the part of the vandalism claim, and we would include that. Same thing with the electrical outlets and the other damage that was done with malicious intent. When you're dealing with some older homes, and again, this is a close-up of the damage that they did with the cinder blocks, but if it's just normal wear and tear to the hardwood floor, some minor scratches and regular marring of the floor that happens over time, that would not be included in that estimate. It would be excluded under the policy conditions, and not something that we would pay for. Again, this is in the bathroom here. You have, there's water that got underneath these tiles, but there was nothing malicious that was done in this room. A vandal didn't come in here and cause this water damage. That would be a totally separate loss, and not something that we would include in the vandalism claim on this one. Like I said, the tenant being a slob does not, there's no coverage for that under the policy. No endorsement they can get. However, tearing up the walls to try to get to the copper, that is something that would be considered vandalism and would be included in the policy. You can see here off to the right, where they stacked the cinder blocks onto the chair, and they wanted to get up into the attic, and they stole a bunch of stuff out of the attic, wiring, and I'll show you that here in just a minute. But you want to make sure that you get every room photographed and look for damage that was done by the vandals. Like in this room here, going back to my example earlier, there was nothing that was done to this floor in here by the vandalism. There's the floor is obviously worn, and it needs to be sanded and refinished, but it's not something that would be included in the vandalism claim, because it wasn't actually damaged due to the vandalism. It was just through wear and tear, and would be specifically excluded in the policy. None of the contents that were in here were damaged or stolen that we could tell, but the tenants left all this stuff behind, and cleaning all this stuff out would not be considered part of the claim either. They just decided to bail in the middle of the night, and they left the stuff here that they couldn't fit. And we would cover the broken glass and the broken screen. That's here because you can't tell one way or the other, and the benefit always goes to the insured. But taking care of all these contents items and everything that's in here is not something that the insurance policy is designed for. Here's the little makeshift step ladder that they made to get up into the crawl space and into the attic. Again, the floors, where they were throwing the cinder blocks around and scratching up the hardwood floors, we did pay for these because it was obviously not something that was just normal wear and tear. But if there hadn't been these big gouges in the floor, and you're looking at these minor scratches here where it's all just from everyday living, we wouldn't have done anything on this floor at all. But because of the damage that was there, the outlets that were stripped, and the holes in the walls and everything else, this house was not that big of a house to begin with, so they did get everything that was vandalized taken care of in the policy, and they got paid for it in the end. This ended up being about $40,000 worth of covered damage that we went and included, and they got paid for after their deductible, and so there's a lot of damage though that when you look at these policies and you look at these houses and you go and get up into the crawl space like I did here and take a look at what's up there so you can identify what they did, and they obviously wandered up here, they got up here, they did a lot of damage, they took a lot of there was some plumbing that ran up here, copper pipes, there was a lot of light fixtures that they went and stole the wiring out of. So we want to make sure that you do the best job you can when you're out there scoping the loss, to check all the different areas where there might have been something damaged. You can see here in the bottom left where there was a fixture that was here, and the hole is still there, but it's gone. So they got up here, they stole whatever they could, disconnected whatever they could, took off with it, and we want to make sure that we always include whatever is damaged up there by the vandals. And not only that, but for safety reasons, if the power was turned back on to this place at some point and these weren't looked at and inspected and identified, it could cause a fire when things get hot again, and so you always want to make sure that you're checking those areas out. Like I said, they were in the process of getting some of these things cut out of there, and I guess ran out of time, but these are the type of fixtures that they had and that were stolen, where those holes were empty, and you can see the cut wires that are here where they stripped everything. So you always want to take as much time as you can at the losses to make sure that you identify everything, look at the exterior, look at the interior, but make sure that you go all the way throughout the house. In this case here, you always want to make sure that you identify the forced entry points. This is the rear door where it was obvious it was pried open. The strike plate was missing, and in fact it's laying on the floor here. Fresh chips, paint chips, where that gives you an indication that it is something recent and not something that's been going on long term. You always want to look at the windows, make sure that those are secure, and identify anything that's broken so you can go and include that in your estimate to take care of the insured. Again, that's when you're dealing with vandalism and malicious mischief, you have to identify, especially in this case here, when the house was vacant, when it actually became unoccupied. When I did my investigation on this, it was determined that the tenants and the insured had proof from their lease and rent payments, and actually he had the sheriff's department go out there and serve the tenants with eviction notice that was dated within the 30 days window for the vandalism exclusion to apply. So the loss was proven. It was proven not to be considered vacant at the time of the loss, and all the vandalism that occurred there, the insured was paid for. So you want to make sure that you do all those things. And now, topics that we're going to be discussing this week on the podcast include any cat deployments that are going on. The Northeast is getting hammered with blizzards and everything else that's going on. We also, I've been talking a lot this last week about the rest of the month of February and going into spring. The cycle for severe weather is going to be very, very active, and in fact, they're expecting a couple of storms to come through this week that we're going to be watching. We're also going to be talking about third-party liability. We also are going to be speaking about inland marine claims. We have a guest that's going to be coming on with us this week, and he's going to be discussing arts and collectibles and handling the inland marine type claims that deal with all kinds of transportable items and sports memorabilia, everything that is covered under an inland marine policy. He would be the guy to go to, and we're going to have him on this week to discuss it. We're going to have a couple of days of inland marine claim handling tips and training that we're going to be going through. We're also going to be talking about theft losses this week. This time of year, thefts are on the rise, and so we're going to be dealing with some of that. And then also, winter's not over yet. You know, we've been seeing a lot of fires, and fire investigations are key. We're going to be talking about those this week as well. We also add to our podcast anything that we get by email or any suggestions that we get for topics to be discussed. So we're very fluid. The podcasts are produced every day and with the fresh information so that we can get everything to everybody on a daily basis that is current and relevant to what you might run into that day. We have several interviews with guests planned for this week, including people that are already deployed. We'll be having discussions with them on the different areas that they're deployed to and what areas they're hearing need more adjusters. We include that in the podcast, and then any information that I get will get put onto the website so that you can access that information as well. We also will be helping Action Catastrophe Team expand by getting their message out to carriers and adjusters. If you haven't been to their website yet, please go to www.actioncatastropheteam.com. They have an adjuster information sheet that is there that you can fill out and get on their roster. They're expanding and are looking for people all across the country, and everything from third-party liability to property, commercial, homeowners, inside, outside. They're looking to expand. So make sure you get on their website and send them your contact information so that you have it. Anything else that we can cover during the week, we're gonna cram into as much time as we can in the podcast. And now I'm going to unmute everybody to see if there is any questions that you have. Everybody's been muted, so let me unmute everybody. I did have a couple of questions that came in as we were going through the information, and I answered those with the information, but does anybody have any questions right now that we can go over? Okay, looks like I answered everything that you had. If you do have any questions, feel free to drop me a line, and I'll be happy to answer it personally for you and respond back to you as soon as possible. But I really thank you for joining us today. Remember, every Saturday morning at 11 o'clock, we'll be having a webinar discussing topics that we covered in the prior week's podcast and letting everybody know what's coming up the following week. If you need anything at all, you can reach me by emailing me at tom@adjusters247.com. You have all the information as far as our phone numbers and how to get a hold of me that's on our website, but I also want to give you my personal cell phone number, which is 754-208-7049. If you have any suggestions or questions or comments, anything that I can help with at any time, feel free to give me a call. But we're always available for you and to answer any questions and to give you any kind of feedback on the different types of claims that you're running into. And I really appreciate everybody joining us today. And I hope everybody has a great weekend, and you join us again next Saturday when we'll be talking about a completely different topic and maybe a topic that you'll be suggesting through our website. I hope you all have a great day. God bless.